Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Jennings. I'm a member of the staff here at National Disability Institute's LEAD Center. We're so excited to have you joining us today for improving services for all job seekers by improving services to customers with disabilities. I'm joined today by my colleague, Rebecca Ceylon, Project Director for the LEAD Center. If you're new to the LEAD Center, we are the National Center on Leadership for the Employment and Economic Advancement of People with Disabilities. We are a collaborative of disability, workforce, and economic empowerment organizations led by National Disability Institute with funding from the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy. We have enjoyed a partnership with the National Association of Workforce Development Professionals since the LEAD Center started, and we're very excited to have this opportunity today to speak to all of you NAWDP members on the line. The mission of the LEAD Center is to advance sustainable, individual, and systems-level change that results in improved, competitive, integrated employment and economic self-sufficiency outcomes for individuals across the spectrum of disability. We meet this mission by providing several pilots across the country, by providing policy analysis, and by providing training and technical assistance, such as today's webinar. I'd now like to have my colleague, Nakia Matthews, provide you with some housekeeping tips.
Good afternoon, everyone. The audio for today's webinar is being broadcast through your computer. Please make sure that your speakers are turned on or your headphones are plugged in. You can control the audio broadcast via the audio broadcast panel, and if you accidentally close this panel or if the sound stops, you can reopen it by going to the top menu, Communicate, Join Audio Broadcast. If you do not have sound capabilities on your computer or you prefer to listen by phone, you can do so by dialing the toll-free number that you see here along with the meeting code. Real-time captioning is provided during this webinar. The captions can be found in the Media Viewer panel, which you'll see in the lower right-hand corner of the webinar platform. If you'd like to make the Media Viewer panel larger, you can close or minimize some of the other panels like Chat, Q&A, or Participants. And conversely, if you do not need the captions, you can minimize the Media Viewer panel. There will be a question and answer portion at the end of the webinar. Please use the chat box or the Q&A box to send any questions you have during the course of the webinar to either me, Nakia Matthews, or to Elizabeth Jennings, and we will direct those questions accordingly. If you are listening by phone and not logged into the webinar, you may also ask questions by emailing Elizabeth directly at ejennings@ndi-inc.org. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and that the recorded archive along with the presentation materials will be available at the LEAD website at the URL you see below. And I will also be pasting into the chat box the link for people to download the slides today if they'd like to. If you experience any technical difficulties during the course of the webinar, please use the chat box to send me, Nakia Matthews, a message, or you may also email me directly at nmatthews@ndi-inc.org.
Thank you so much, Nakia. This is Rebecca Ceylon, and I wanted to take an opportunity to welcome Bridget Brown, the Executive Director of the National Association of Workforce Development Professionals, to welcome you to the webinar and make some comments. Bridget?
Thank you so much, Rebecca, and welcome everyone. I am so excited about today's webinar. Not only do we have great partners in Rebecca, Elizabeth, and Nakia from the LEAD Center, but I'm really excited that this topic is getting a lot more play than maybe it would have 4 or 5 years ago. With the new legislation that's come through, there are going to be new expectations of the workforce system to serve all of our clients. And the great thing is many of the techniques that we would use for individuals who may have disabilities are still going to benefit those without the disabilities. So I'm really excited to hear about all of the resources and ideas that Rebecca and Elizabeth are going to put forward today. And I also encourage everyone either at the end of this webinar or maybe tomorrow to check out the Lead Center website because they do have some pretty great resources on there. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to our friends from the Lead Center.
Thank you so much, Bridget. So our topic today is improving services for all job seekers by improving services to customers with disabilities. What we plan to cover is to provide you with an overview of the new Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, also known as WIOA. We also want to talk about the opportunities that it provides through universal design strategies to successfully serve a diverse range of job seekers. So we'll spend some time talking about universal design approaches. We'll talk about the opportunities to partner with the disability community and ways that you can reach out to the disability community to support common goals, and job seeker education that also will enable people to have successful outcomes. And then in the end, we will offer you resources and strategies to promote successful employment outcomes and that represent best practices. As Nakia said, we'll leave some time at the end for questions and answers. So feel free to be typing your questions in as we proceed. So first, a brief overview of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. On July 22nd of 2014, President Barack Obama signed WIOA into law. It passed Congress with a wide bipartisan majority, which is kind of unprecedented in these times. One of the things that WIOA does is reaffirm the ongoing and central role of American job centers. It promotes program coordination and alignment of key employment, education and training programs at all levels, the federal, state, local, and regional levels, and you'll hear some of that as we go through some of the specifics. It builds upon proven practices that were in WIA, such as sector strategies, career pathways, regional economic approaches, and work-based training. And it complements and supports the President's job-driven workforce vision. So WIOA supersedes the Workforce Investment Act of 1998 and retains and amends the Adult Education and Family Literacy Act, the Wagner-Peiser Act, and the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. There's a lot of information in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. We're going to just provide you with a few highlights and then talk about it from a disability perspective before we get into some approaches. So we'll only be scratching the surface here. WIOA requires states to strategically align workforce development programs to support job seekers and employers. So one of the things that you'll hear us talk about is the requirement for there to be uniform state plans that allow different workforce development programs like vocational rehabilitation to align what they're doing with the state workforce development plan in general. It promotes accountability and transparency of programs. So in many cases, it creates a single common set of measures. It fosters regional collaboration to meet the needs of regional economies, streamlines and strengthens the strategic roles of workforce development boards. So it's streamlining in terms of requiring fewer members, but keeping the focus on it being a business majority and being business-led. It encourages some additional partners to accomplish its goals. It enhances services provided to job seekers and employers through the American Job Center system, and improves services to employers and promotes work-based training. So WIOA in general focuses on assisting workers with and without disabilities to succeed in the labor market and builds upon what WIA had to offer and what we learned from the last many years in the workforce system. Some more highlights are that WIOA provides access to high-quality training and enhances workforce services for unemployed and other job seekers. And as you may have heard, WIOA ultimately will replace what is now core and intensive services with career services, with a focus on career services. You may have been getting emails about listening sessions and other opportunities to provide feedback to the people who are writing the regulations for WIOA. And we encourage you to take the opportunity to provide your feedback on how you think these career services can best work for the people that you're serving. WIOA also focuses on improving services to people with disabilities, and you'll hear a bit about that in a minute. It's interwoven throughout WIOA. Makes key investments in serving disconnected youth and other vulnerable populations, increases the performance and quality of Job Corps programs, and reinforces connections with registered apprenticeships. So it's one of the ways that it promotes workforce learning, work-based training for people who access AJC services. And now I'd like to turn it over to Elizabeth to talk some about the provisions specifically related to people with disabilities.
Great. Thanks so much, Rebecca. So WIOA increases some of the language regarding individuals with disabilities, particularly access to high-quality workforce services and the preparation of individuals with disabilities for competitive integrated employment. For those of you on the line who are from the disability community, you know that that language, competitive integrated employment, is pretty common within the disability community, but may not be as common for those of you who have predominantly spent time in more universal workforce services. So that may be something that we get continued guidance on as things move forward. One-stop career centers will provide physical and programmatic accessibility to employment and training services for individuals with disabilities and implement new Section 188, which are non-discrimination requirements related to functions of the local boards, local plan content, and certification of the one-stop career centers to include an assessment of physical and programmatic accessibility, again in accordance with Section 183, and that certification will take place at least Section 188, and that certification will take place at least every 3 years. There's to be a unified state plan that will include all the core programs, including vocational rehabilitation and adult education. And among the requirements for that unified state plan will be a description of how the one-stop delivery system will comply, again, with these Section 188 or non-discrimination regulations, with a focus on physical and programmatic accessibility of facilities, programs, services, technology, and materials for individuals with disabilities. We're going to be providing you some information as we move forward today about universal design and universal access, which will help with some of the items you may need to refocus on. A lot of times we've done a really great job across the board throughout our communities in looking at the accessibility of facilities, the physical accessibility, but where people still report access issues is the programmatic accessibility. And so later today we'll provide you some information on programmatic accessibility and measures that you may already have in place or you may consider as you move forward. Also related to disability, there's language around youth with disabilities and that they will receive extensive pre-employment transition services so they can successfully obtain competitive integrated employment. Those of you who work at American Job Centers or one-stop centers or workforce centers or whatever you call them in your local area likely have robust programming around youth, and we in the disability community are excited to see that continue. The language speaks to supporting discontinued youth, of which youth with disabilities comprise a high percentage. It's going to require local areas to increase the percentage of youth formula funds used to serve out-of-school youth from 75% versus 30% under WIA. We'll also require local areas to spend at least 20% of youth formula funds on work experience activities and provide additional allowable activities including financial literacy, education, and entrepreneurial training. the state vocational rehabilitation agencies will set aside at least 15% of funding to provide transition services to youth with disabilities. So there's some connectivity here in which there's a request that the plans be done across systems, and then there's a look at how we're going to use that to also support some targeted groups such as out-of-school youth and disconnected youth. We are very excited to see the focus on youth. As many of you on the line may know, having a work experience while you're young is a key indicator to working as an adult. And with a very high unemployment rate for people with disabilities, this is something that we focus on and we're very excited to see in WIOA. We at National Disability Institute are also very enthused to see the language included around financial literacy. As many of you on the line may know, National Disability Institute focuses on the economic advancement of individuals with disabilities, and we have a core belief that financial education and financial capability strategies for all people, including people with disabilities, is very important and key to having the life that one would like to define for themselves. So continuing on with provisions related to disability, local workforce development boards may designate a standing committee to provide information and assist with operational and other issues related to compliance with non-discrimination and applicable accessibility requirements. And that standing committee may also provide input regarding appropriate training for staff on these issues. There also may be the establishment of a committee to advise the Secretary of Labor on strategies to increase competitive integrated employment for individuals with disabilities. And pardon my language, I said there is a committee being put together now that will advise the Secretary of Labor, and that committee includes the Office of Disability Employment Policy, Wage and Hour Division, and ETA, which is the Employment and Training Administration. As we look at how these local boards may be designed, it provides an opportunity for you at the local level to look at some of your community-based partners and identify partners that have been strategic alliances for you, partners that have been productive and effective in their partnerships with you, and start to look at who you might want to put forward to your workforce development board as possible members of these newly formed boards or these standing committees. WIOA has a growing body of technical assistance tools and resources that are available to you. The Department of Labor has a WIOA resource page and a dedicated email so that if you have additional questions as you build your knowledge of WIOA, you can send them directly to the Department of Labor for a response. The Department of Education has an Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education WIOA resource page, which also provides good information. And the Rehabilitation Service Administration has a WIOA resource page. Not everyone may be familiar that vocational rehabilitation services provided through your state offices report to RSA, the Rehabilitation Services Administration. So that's how they're involved in WIOA. Also, you can continue to join us here at the LEAD Center. We do our best to provide new information out to the field as it becomes available, and we're very open to suggestions about continued training and technical assistance that is needed. So as things move forward, if there are areas of specific concern or specific kinds of information you think would benefit the field, we would really love to hear from you and receive your input on different trainings that we could put together to benefit workforce professionals across the country.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So we now want to talk about some of the additional things that you can do as WIOA is being implemented. Elizabeth just gave you a lot of information about resources. We want to remind you that this PowerPoint will be posted on the LEAD Center site, as well as a transcript of today's webinar, so that you'll have opportunities to access that information. And we anticipate over the next month or so posting a brief that highlights the disability provisions of WIOA, on our website, as well as things that people can do to promote employment outcomes for people with disabilities under WIOA. We're working on a guide to Section 188, which is the non-discrimination provisions of the workforce law, so that there'll be additional resources. So we do encourage you to step back and to get on our mailing list, so that as these things are posted, you'll be notified about them. So one of the things that we promote is the use of universal design in services, any services, but certainly services for the workforce system. And universal design is exactly as it sounds. It's designing programs, designing outreach, designing interactions so that anyone can access them. So we'll talk some about the principles of universal design and some things that you can do. We also will give you information about partners that can help in the implementation of WIOA and the successful employment outcomes for people with disabilities. We know that some American job centers may not serve a lot of people with disabilities, or may not know if people have disabilities who come in. So we'll talk about who some of those partners can be, ways to do outreach and proactive recruitment of people with disabilities, and again, to use your partners as much as possible. And we'll touch upon job seeker education, because I think from the job seeker's perspective, from the workforce system and employer's perspective, sometimes it's confusing to know whether or not people should disclose their disability, when they should disclose their disability. So there are things that you can do to make it easier for that to happen, for people to request accommodations, and for you to learn if people need additional support to be able to be successful. It's important to have informed and educated job seekers so that they can be as successful as possible. So we'll start with universal design. The Department of Labor defines universal design as the use of common strategies that reinforce the concept of an inclusive setting that welcomes diversity, including products and environments that are accessible to and usable by all. So if you think of walking into a foreign environment, one that you haven't been in before, if there are things that are color-coded, if different places are indicated by graphics, then you overcome literacy and language barriers by making it universally accessible. If you think of the ramp, which we all take for granted on a lot of buildings, many buildings initially were ramped so that people who use wheelchairs could more easily access them. But ramps have been a wonderful universal design for people who are pushing strollers, or for youth who use skateboards, or for people who have rolling luggage. So it's something that may have started off as an accessibility design, but really makes things better for everyone. So the use of universal design strategies enables workforce staff to provide easier access, a welcoming atmosphere, and better customer service. Universal design strengthens practices to better serve people with disabilities or people who have other challenges to employment. For example, people with a wide range of learning styles, people who speak other languages, people who have different literacy or educational levels, who learn through multiple intelligences, who may have different experiences or abilities. Universal design provides multiple and flexible methods to ensure that learners acquire the information and knowledge that they need. So what is universal design? So it's a strategy for making products, environments, systems, and services welcoming and usable to as diverse a range of people as possible. Its key principles are simplicity, flexibility, ease of access, and efficiency, and those are all key to this. If any of you have been in an airport recently and have gone through the security screening, they offer the guidance for what's expected of you as a video that has a voice over to tell you what to do, but they also have open captioning so that if you can't hear it for whatever reason, you can read about it. They also offer it graphically so that it shows you what you can and can't take with big circles and X's through the things that you're not allowed to have, and with pictures. So they went for simplicity, they went for ease of access, they created something that was efficient and that reached the broadest number of people possible, given that people who come through airports speak many languages, may or may not have the literacy skills, or may be limited in other ways. So it becomes a lens through which all aspects of interactions can be viewed, and it can be applied to products, services, physical environments, communications, technology, policies, and practices. And we encourage you to go to the link that's at the bottom of this slide. It's at the U.S. Department of Labor Office of Disability Employment Policy. They have an entire section of their website on universal design approaches and provide just wonderful information that people can use in trying to decide on universal approaches. Universal design is a proactive approach that anticipates the barriers that people might face regardless of the cause, and creates approaches to overcome and accommodate them. So it requires us to think through as we're developing materials that are being sent out, as we're designing the entryway to our job center, or the training approaches that we're using. It encourages us to be proactive and think of barriers that people might face and how we might overcome or accommodate them. It also talks about developing services that are accessible to the largest number of people, that then reduces the need for specialized assistance. One of the reasons that people worry about having people with disabilities in the workforce system is that there's an assumption that you'll need to provide one-to-one assistance to every person with a disability who walks in. But if things are designed in a way that reaches the most people possible, that eliminates the need for that. It reduces the need for individualized accommodation requests, and it delays when accommodations may need to be put in place. So it's again, by being proactive, it allows more people to access the services and allows things to be much more individualized. So what are some other examples of universal design? We've all seen open and closed captioning. You all have on your TV sets the ability to turn on captions if you find the little CC on your remote. But many places have open captions. This, of course, originally was designed for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, but are now used in restaurants and bars and other places, where it's just turned on all the time. In places like airports, as I said, it's turned on as open captioning, so there's an assumption that people will need to use it that way. Another universal design is the fairly universal availability of screen readers. On almost every computer now and on smaller handheld devices, there is the ability to have the computer read the screen to you. You may never have tried to do that, but it's one of the accommodations that's available. The one that's built into most systems is a very mechanized voice usually, but there are ones that can be purchased that are sound much more like a person speaking. But in any case, screen readers are universally available and can be made available in each of your systems. Doing things like increasing the font size on documents is a universal design. At the top of most web pages, there are letter A's, usually in different sizes, where you can just click on it and it will It will change the font size so people who might need large print can have that available. You also can proactively have a few large print documents available for anything that that you might be sending out or might be asking people to read or fill out. Most computers also have the ability to translate screens to another language, you know, another universal design that makes things more accessible. Curb cuts and ramps are certainly a universal design, and they're pretty ubiquitous. You know, they're everywhere and facilitate access for people who may not be able to use stairs. Voice-activated applications are a universal design that again, you know, things like Dragon Speak or JAWS or other applications that allow you to write and send emails and fill things out makes things accessible to people who may not have the literacy skills to do it, or for another reason might not be able to type. Even things like door handles that don't require grasping. Many of you probably had renovations done to places where the door handle no longer is a knob, but just a bar that you can press down that makes it more accessible. Doors that have push bars or automatics or electronic door openers are all universal designs that we encounter pretty readily. So why is universal design important for the workforce system? Universal design makes access to services, jobs, and learning accessible to all people, thereby serving the largest number of youth and adults, even if people don't have expertise in disabilities or knowledge of someone's specific disability. The Lead Center recently did a secret shopper study where people with non-apparent disabilities went into a number of AJCS in different parts of the country and disclosed that they had a disability even though it wasn't an apparent disability, and had a very mixed reaction or mixed experience to the services that they received. And in part, I think there is an assumption that everyone needs to have specific expertise about all the different disabilities. And using universal design makes that less of an issue, that if someone, you know, is experiencing a disability, using approaches that work for everyone make that much less of an issue. Job seekers are encouraged to use alternate methods to represent themselves and their skills, abilities, and talents. And we've had experience with people who, rather than developing a resume, may develop a portfolio or something that has photographs of the different things that they can do. And that turns out to be the best way for them to present themselves and present what their skills, abilities, and talents are. They might do videos or things like that. So, you know, being flexible, keeping it simple are other ways that universal design can assist people in the workforce system. Elizabeth mentioned the Section 188 regulations that require recipients of WIOA funds to provide equal opportunities and not discriminate. And it's, I saw someone asked a question about whether or not that applies to people who may have criminal histories. And 188 is not just about disabilities. It does, you know, we are focused on non-discrimination specific to people with disabilities, but it's the regulations against discrimination for anyone. So yes, it does apply to everyone, and part of what we're going to be trying to do and have already collected many is to get examples from different parts of the country of how people have been able to implement the Section 188 regulations in ways that create access and overcome some of the barriers that people with disabilities historically may have faced in the workforce system. Another reason why this is important is that discrimination is prohibited in all aspects of services, so in registration, in the provision of assistance, in benefits, services, and training, including core, intensive, training and support services. So it's important that we make sure that discrimination in any interactions that we have with people, including people with disabilities, is something that we have thought through and feel prepared for, either through universal design or through work with partners.
Elizabeth? Thanks, Rebecca. You know, universal design really provides all of the gateway to universal access. And each time we, here at the LEAD Center or at National Disability Institute, we talk to folks about universal access and universal design, I'm always reminded of how many of those pieces of universal design I really enjoy in my daily life. So the closed captioning I love because it lets me multitask and like look up to see what I missed. I'm always laughing at friends who now have their font up to 20 on their iPhone. I'm sure some of you on the line can relate to this. And it's like a little competition, who's going to be the last to go to the largest font. But all of those are, you know, universal design aspects and things that we haven't really looked at in our day-to-day life as specifically targeting access for the disability community, but they really have been targeting, but they've been a benefit to all of us across communities, across ages, and just something that we've really benefited from. So when we talk about universal access, we're really talking about the use of strategies for making products, environments, operational systems and services, all of those things welcoming and usable to the most diverse range of people possible. It also speaks to reasonable efforts and appropriate steps to ensure that recruitment, outreach, and targeting efforts are accessible and promote the inclusion of people with disabilities and others in programs and activities. Under universal access, all activities being offered are in the most integrated setting appropriate, and by that we mean that you don't say you have to specifically go to this office that's just for people with disabilities, or if you want to receive that service, only people like you are going to get it in this specific setting. We want folks to be completely engaged in all of the services with everyone else who's going to receive them. And universal access also speaks to workforce professionals providing reasonable accommodations in the registration for and provision of aid, benefits, services, and training. You know, today, as Rebecca mentioned, we're pointing to universal access, universal design in relation to people with disabilities, but you know, people with disabilities represent about 20% of the U.S. population, and they cross-cut all of these other diverse populations. So we are intentionally focused on them because that's our area of expertise, but we know that universal design and universal access opens facilities and services, and most important to us, the different critically important programs that you offer to a whole body of people who may otherwise not be able to utilize the range of options that are available to them. Universal access also includes effective communication with generalized actions for anyone and the available specific support to meet individual needs, architectural accessibility, and most importantly, programmatic accessibility. So it may be the provision or redesign of equipment, how you design your classes, how you provide assistive technology, the use of alternative career assessments, or the provision of someone to assist. Again, we don't mean that you should change the way you provide services to focus on individual one-on-one support. We know that that's not the way that the workforce system was designed, but it is a reminder that when you're looking at universal design, you are considering some of the additional unique experiences that may present when you're serving different populations of people with disabilities. The one real great benefit of universal access is that settings and interactions are inclusive. So that means not just at the workforce centers, but also in workplaces, in learning environments, in places of business, in networking settings, which can be very important, and just across the community in general. So we wanted to talk a little bit about what AJCS, American Job Centers, can do to continue to improve services to people with disabilities. And we do want to acknowledge that we at National Disability Institute have worked with workforce centers across the country. We've been privileged to provide training and technical assistance through the Disability Program Navigator Program and now the Disability Employment Initiative. And we have very high regard for the capabilities of workforce centers to serve people with disabilities. However, when we do things like the Secret Shopper study, we do find that in some areas there's still the need for continued education, and there's the option to go even a little further in the provision of services to people with disabilities. There has been some challenge in that sometimes people with disabilities come in and what they report they need doesn't match with what the workforce center provides. And so that's why we added some things in around job seeker education, and we're always available to be a resource to you here if there's anything we can provide in addition to some of the suggestions we have to share today. Also, if you have other suggestions, feel free to put them in the chat box. We'll share them as we can during the Q&A section. So some of the things that you can do are to offer assistance and accommodations to all customers rather than just a particular population. This is really entrenched in universal design and is a way for you to be thinking about some of those folks that have hidden disabilities who may be looking at one of their other diversity factors first before they consider some of their disability needs. One is to make information on all services available to all customers, so you avoid assumptions that certain people may not be interested in some services, and to provide choices, technology, physical settings, assessment approaches and tools in different ways, online, face-to-face, self-directed approaches, and to make accommodations for learning styles. We have heard from folks where they were not able to participate because there was only one view of how that information could be provided. But just providing it in a different way, perhaps online, so the person could have their screen reader use it, would have made a big difference to the level of service that the individual was provided. Some other things you can consider are to eliminate unnecessary complexity and or contacts. Having been a direct service provider myself, I found that one thing that was very helpful was to make sure that the places I was sending people, that the person was qualified, that they were eligible for the service, that the service was available. And sometimes that can happen even within our own settings where we need additional information about the programs and services available before we direct people to go to those areas of our office. To offer accommodations to everyone for literacy and language needs. Like Rebecca mentioned, looking at how you might include different graphics, color coding, or larger prints to provide information and to attract people to different opportunities. There's also the option to create online or videotaped versions of forms and materials, including orientation information. And I'm sure that some of you on the line may have stories to share about how this has actually helped in some of your orientation, especially as the number of people you're serving have increased so much over the past few years. So some of the strategies you may have put into place to streamline some of your services, you may also find really help with some of the needs you have in creating additional universal design opportunities. So a few other things. One is to conduct periodic Secret Shopper projects. I have to tell you that when we did the Secret Shopper project, we learned things that we really didn't expect to learn. Some of those things were very positive that we didn't know were going on, and some pointed to some additional areas of need that helped us to think about what are some trainings that we can provide. We did the Secret Shopper project really to inform what we had learned from a survey we did with NAWDP. People were surveyed to see what's the kind of information that you'd like to receive as far as training and technical assistance goes. And overwhelmingly, people reported that they'd like a better understanding of how to serve people with non-apparent disabilities. So we did the Secret Shopper to specifically with people with non-apparent disabilities so that we could understand what's going on now when they go into different workforce centers. They were asked to disclose so that nobody felt like they were asked to do something and they weren't prepared, or they didn't know that the person had a hidden disability. And so we have some information that came out, and in the next few months we'll be providing you an online training that you can sit in on to better understand that target audience and some of the specific needs and suggestions related to them. You can also create universal design of staff roles and teams so that folks across the board are working interconnectedly. You can require that partners use universal design practices in formal partnership agreements. This is especially helpful when the workforce center is being rebid to different partners so that it's included in their contracts. You can identify and implement cross-training opportunities with partners and people with disabilities. And you can identify internal experts who can provide assistance and creative problem-solving support as challenges arise. I'd really like to recommend that you can do the last two bullets together. If you identify and implement cross-training opportunities with partners and people with disabilities, you will build your internal expertise. So there may be somebody who is specifically focused. There may be multiple people focused on how to ensure universal design for different populations, but bringing in outside partners, even outside of the disability community, can really help you in identifying what some of your internal needs are. If you have an interest in doing some cross-training and partnering with members of the disability community, stay tuned. We're going to talk about some state and local disability service system members you might want to think about. But I do want to take a moment also to share that we have here at the LEAD Center a community of practice for centers for independent living and workforce centers. So if you are in a local area where you haven't built a strong partnership with your Center for Independent Living and you'd like to look at the community of practice, please reach out to me after the event or through the chat box. I'll pull your name from there, and we'll share some information about that project and how you can participate in this free ongoing training and technical assistance. So a few additional things is to create networking opportunities to make the business case for hiring people with disabilities, including the benefits of incorporating universal design into employment, recruitment, hiring, and retention practices. This is going to be particularly good to help your employer partners with some of the new Section 503 regulations that have come about. Sorry, everyone. Sometimes all the different numbers throw me a little bit. You can also pursue customized employment with your AJC partners. Customized employment looks at how you look at employment based upon the individual's strengths and not just look at some of the jobs that are posted, but look at what the employer needs are and how the individual strengths and preferences of the job seeker can match and meet some of the employer needs that you see presenting. We also have training on that and are welcome to provide you with additional information if you're interested. Moving forward with some other things you can do to improve services. During orientation for all customers, you can review their rights to equal opportunity and their right to file a complaint. And you can provide training for staff on the use of assistive technology, materials in accessible formats, and materials that address different learning styles and reading levels, captioning, and interpretation services. You may also want to note that you have an opportunity to think about how you are going to pass this information on as key staff members leave. One of the things we found talking to workforce centers is that they do a really great job of bringing in things like assistive technology, but the person who is expert on it when they leave, the information on how to use the technology, what its care and maintenance is like, sometimes it leaves with the individual who is managing it. So thinking about kind of how you're going to make sure there's not just one expert, but there is that universal design of staff can be very important. So to shift our focus to partnership development, I'm going to hand it back off to my colleague, Rebecca.
Thanks, Elizabeth. We wanted to talk some about partnership development, because you're really not expected to do this alone. And there really are a lot of things in WIOA that encourage AJCs and the workforce development boards to include partners from the disability service system. So because there's a renewed focus on the inclusion of people with disabilities across workforce services, there's a new opportunity to engage the disability service system. Employment is a critical component of disability services. Many states now are considered employment-first states, where the service systems for people with disabilities are compelled to consider employment as the first option for youth and adults in the use of public funds and in the services that are provided. So these partnerships can allow you to leverage the disability service system to benefit both your system and their system, and ultimately the job seeker. So who are some of the partners that you might want to engage in this? And there are quite a few in different communities. We're having a little technical problem advancing the next slide. And Elizabeth mentioned before that the workforce development boards will have standing committees, one of them focused on disability. You know, we encourage you to become involved with that. This is all about being proactive and thinking ahead. I've been watching a few of the questions that have been posted about, you know, what to do when encountering job seekers who are deaf or hearing impaired if you can't afford an interpreter and they may not have high literacy levels or whatever. And again, there's no single answer for any of this, but partnering with people who have expertise in disability services so that perhaps there are ways to use relays or there are ways to use other assistive technology and to make sure that your workforce center, your one-stop AJC, has the most current technology that can assist people, can best happen through partnerships. And also, as we've mentioned before, this is all about creating win-win situations. So most of the disability service system agencies also are wanting to support people to get jobs, and if you can do that together, you both get credit for the positive outcome, and more people are employed. Vocational rehabilitation is a required partner. Under WIOA, they're required to be on the state workforce board. But even if they weren't a required partner, they're a valuable partner because they serve thousands of people who have disabilities who come to them because they want to work. And they have services to assist in planning, to assist people in understanding their benefits and how to work and still maintain health insurance until they're earning enough so that they aren't dependent on public benefits. They offer a lot of services to support people with disabilities so that no single system has to do all the work. So encourage your local or state vocational rehabilitation agency to have job seekers who come to them enroll in your AJC rather than just sending people to VR who may come in and identify as having a disability. Either through VR or as a separate agency, it's a division of blind services in every state. Again, they can provide problem-solving support. They can be one of your partners in trying to figure out the best way to support job seekers with disabilities so that they can achieve employment outcomes. There are other required American Job Center partners, people who manage TANF programs and others who serve many people with disabilities and who you would want to engage in this. Every state has work incentive planning and assistance grantees. These are benefits planners, certified benefits planners who can assist job seekers with disabilities in some instances, vocational rehabilitation can pay for benefits counseling. In other locations, the WIPA program pays for it. The Ticket to Work program can pay for benefits counseling. A lot of people with disabilities choose to not pursue employment because they fear losing benefits. But the reality is that they really can work and be better off economically if someone can guide them on the process of understanding what's available to them. Developmental disabilities councils and the state agencies that oversee developmental disability services are great partners. And again, they're able to provide long-term support, job coaching, other kinds of services, as can vocational rehabilitation, to support people in job retention or in the orientation to a new job. Departments of mental health or behavioral health similarly are very focused on helping people get and keep jobs and have services available to support people during that process, including job coaching, in some cases benefits counseling. State Medicaid agencies, through Medicaid waivers especially, can support employment goals for people, and this allows for the braiding of funds and resources. Elizabeth mentioned independent living centers. Many of the independent living centers do provide job development and job placement support, as well as other services to assist people. Some of them are WIPA grantees, so they provide benefits counseling. Some of them provide services to support economic advancement for people. Every state has protection and advocacy services for people with disabilities, for people with developmental disabilities and mental health disabilities especially, and they are potentially positive partners who can assist. And then every state and region and local area has a network of community-based providers. Some are community rehabilitation programs. They may be focused on a single disability. They may be cross-disability. And again, they're partners who can both provide you with people who might access your services and support for them. Again, some of the questions, that have come up ask about how to best interact with people with specific disabilities. In many cases, people can come to the American Job Center with someone who knows them, and it can support them through the orientation process, through the application process, with assessment and other things. So these are partners that you can use for many reasons. Disability advocacy organizations also can provide support for people who are entering the workforce system, or support for individuals. So one of the things that WIOA encourages is to have the one-stop system do outreach and proactive recruitment of people with disabilities, to increase the pool of applicants with disabilities, but also to support employer partners in meeting their commitments for Section 503 and VEBRA. Now, Section 503 is in the Rehabilitation Act, and it compels federal contractors to make every effort to have 7% of their workforce be people with disabilities. So by your providing support to your employer partners to be able to meet that goal, it again creates a win-win situation and shows the value added that the workforce system provides to employers. VEBRA is the Vietnam-era Veterans Readjustment Assistance Act. It was passed at the same time as Section 503, and again provides requirements for doing outreach and providing support to Vietnam-era veterans, so that there are requirements for that and support that's available. So using the partners that we discussed, you know, including, I didn't have, I didn't list among the partners veterans organizations, but veterans organizations would be another place to do outreach with and to develop agreements for recruitment. And the other area we wanted to focus on was the importance of job seeker education, that it's important to educate job seekers with disabilities on self-identification to help them clarify their rights and the employer's reporting requirements. So people often are confused or concerned about disclosing their disability, and the more that people know about when to disclose, what their options are, what their rights are to disclose, and what the benefits are to disclosing. And one of the benefits is that job seekers who need reasonable accommodations will improve their ability to secure and maintain employment by understanding the procedures for disclosing their disability and requesting a reasonable accommodation. And again, this is an area in which your partners can assist. If your partners have been working with someone, they may have insight into what someone might require to be successful in the workplace. And this is another area where you really don't have to go it alone. And lastly, we just wanted to provide you with links to some additional resources. The Office of Disability Employment Policy in the Department of Labor has a wealth of resources on their site about WIOA, about universal design, customized employment, just a wide variety of topics that would be useful, toolkits on workplace flexibility that could allow you to support an employer. So we encourage you to go there. The Disability Employment Initiative, DEI, is an initiative that is jointly funded by the Office of Disability Employment Policy and the Education and Training Administration. The goal of DEI is to improve coordination and collaboration among employment and training and asset development programs implemented at the state and local levels, including the Ticket to Work program, and to build effective community partnerships that leverage public and private resources to better serve people with disabilities and improve their employment outcomes. So the DEI project has a number of wonderful resources. They have a technical assistance link that we've provided here. The Disability Employment Community of Practice provides disability and employment resources for the public workforce system, including promising practices to promote the positive employment outcomes for people with disabilities. And that's a Workforce 3.1 site that has wonderful information, including webinars. They have 30-second trainings, and we've provided a link to that. They have an American Job Center Access Guide, which we encourage you to look at, and provide information on the Disability Employment Initiative. They also have been hosting some of the listening sessions on WIOA to collect information from the field about things that you believe should appear in the regulations that are being written. So we wanted to leave you with those resources in addition to the resources that on WIOA that Elizabeth reviewed earlier. And we have about 10 minutes left for questions. So we'll look at some in the chat box and encourage you, if you haven't posed your question, to please type it in now.
Thanks so much, Rebecca. So several of you have sent in questions, but we're open to more. If we don't get to your question today, we'll be sure to pull it from the chat box and email you, or you're welcome to email us after the webinar. There were a few questions about some guidance. For example, one question was, I work with a number of signing deaf consumers. Agencies have routinely said there is no money for interpreters for provision of services. Some don't read well, so printed word is not a suitable substitute. Are there suggestions for universal design for this group? So as Rebecca mentioned, of course, there's the option to partner. I kind of take from this question that the individual may be part of a disability organization who is looking for some additional information. But partnerships are great. Of course, there's commissions for the deaf and hard of hearing, and there are other state services that can provide the financial support for interpreters when an individual is in an employment search. That's one of the benefits of partnering with a state system like VR. So if a person is co-enrolled and the individual needs interpreting services for interviews and things like that, that may be part of the support that VR provides, while Workforce Center is providing other services like interviewing skills and things of that nature. But I also want to encourage you to look at some of the great LinkedIn groups that are going on. I have to give kudos to NAWDP. It's a really wonderful LinkedIn group that discusses a range of interesting topics and provides guidance to each other. We at the LEAD Center also have a LinkedIn group. So a great way to tackle some of these challenges is to look at what colleagues across the country are doing. And we often find that what folks are doing in one state, people in another state may not have latched onto yet, or even from community to community. So if you don't get the ideas you're looking for today, please reach out to us or join one of our listservs or LinkedIn groups, and we'll see if we can't find some colleagues that can share with you some of the innovative things they've done to meet these different needs.
Yeah. If I can add, one of the things that we've been doing is to encourage AJCs and others in your outreach materials to encourage job seekers to let you know if they're going to need accommodations, so that whatever outreach you end up doing to try and pull in more people with disabilities, that it would be important to request that they make an appointment and let you know ahead what kind of accommodations they may need, so that you can be prepared for it and so that they're not wasting their time as well. So think about, again, proactive things that you can do. That might be the opportunity to have that person bring a family member who signs, you know, even if it's just for that first initial intake, or someone else, as Elizabeth said, you know, perhaps they're linked into a service system or some other group. There must be people out there that they communicate with. But you know, if in your outreach materials you can encourage people to let you know ahead of time that they're going to require accommodations and to make an appointment so that you can be prepared for that, it creates a situation that is the best use of everyone's time and resources.
Great. Another question that came in is, our challenge in our community is how to interest the local one-stop center to include persons with developmental disabilities into their outreach and program offerings. Do you have strategies to recommend for us to meet our Workforce Center halfway?
Yeah, and that's an excellent question. I think, you know, again, we've talked a lot about partnerships. Most people with developmental disabilities are eligible for either school services or services through a Developmental Disabilities Administration or through vocational rehabilitation. And for people who have, if they are significant developmental disabilities, especially for people who might have a higher level of support needs, it's a wonderful opportunity to do that in partnership. The one-stop career centers aren't necessarily equipped for long-term support and the kind of individualized approach that developmental disabilities agencies are used to providing, or even that VR might be able to provide on an individual basis. So it's another one where just sending someone with a significant developmental disability to an AJC might not be the approach, but finding a way to do that in partnership with other programs or people that may support them might create much more of a win-win, especially if someone's going to need long-term support services, who might need more on-the-job support initially, at least, to be able to be successful. So, I mean, that might be useful.
Yeah, you know, now too with the passage of WIOA and some of the additional guidance that's going to be coming, but you may find that this is a new opportunity to look at the state level and the state plan that will be developed and its cross-systems approach. So this may present a new opportunity to, while thinking thoughtfully about the capacity of the workforce system and how it provides universal design, but to think about how could these partnerships align to ensure that it is meeting the needs of those folks with more significant disabilities, and how those partners are aligning to provide, you may call it a circle of support. In the workforce system, you likely call it an integrated resource team to meet some of those needs.
We should also mention that, and I don't pretend to be an expert on WIOA or to remember all the nooks and crannies that are in there, but I do believe that there are required agreements, formal agreements, not just with the vocational rehabilitation system, but with the state agency responsible for developmental disability services, with the state Medicaid agency, with the state agency that oversees mental or behavioral health services. So it might be an opportunity as those are being developed. You know, WIOA just passed in July. Things are still being shaped. There may be things that you want to suggest in your state or in your region or local area, wherever you're working, that could be in that agreement that could facilitate the better support of people who have developmental disabilities. So it's just something else to think about. You know, there might be ways to reach out to the state workforce board to shape what you think would make that more successful.
And we'll just add one more thing, which is that Employment First in different states has had a renewed focus on meeting these needs, and you might just want to, as someone in the chat box suggested, check out your state's Employment First initiative. So we're really out of time, but we did get a few questions about individuals who are receiving Social Security benefits, including Supplemental Security Income, which is SSI, and Social Security Disability Insurance, which is SSDI. And the questions related both to how do you encourage people to work when they're applying for these benefits, and then how do you get them to focus on work after they start receiving them. And I'll just take a moment to say that the Social Security benefits can be very complicated. Connecting with the Work Incentive Planning and Assistance Grantee in your local area can be of great value. Also, if you check out our websites, both the LEAD Center and National Disability Institute, we have many archived webinars on Social Security benefits, and we have additional webinars planned for this year through National Disability Institute to provide you some basic information on those benefits. But it's important for people to have connections to folks with good information about those benefits, because while the benefits do appear to have grave disincentives for working, it does provide a lot of opportunity for people to work, not only through the regulations, but through the work incentives and through the Ticket to Work program. So we want to invite you to continue to reach out to us if you have additional questions or need for training and technical assistance. You can reach us at the LEAD Center or at National Disability Institute. And we'd like to give a special thank you to Bridget and to all of the folks at NAWDP for partnering with us today, and our thanks to all of you who joined us. It's our pleasure to provide you this information, and we hope that we'll have future opportunities to support you through training and technical assistance. We hope you'll join us again. Our next LEAD Center webinar is going to be next Wednesday at 3 p.m. If you haven't signed up yet, visit us at leadcenter.org. It's free, and we hope you'll join us then. Thank you very much. Have a great day.